ya! My name is Oshun. On this channel, we uncover the creepiest, most unusual haunted TikToks the internet has to offer for entertainment purposes. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the Soul Tribe for your weekly dose of supernatural coming to you every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays, baby. Y'all are my Soul Tribe. Tribe is with a Y. Because the Y is for you, of course, and that's because I love you so freaking much. I am an air sign, so I hope you felt that wind, if you catch my drift. It's like, nah. And today's shout out goes to someone special. Her name is Miss D. Washington, DW Persian Excursion. She has been a beginner literally since day one, so she deserves a shout out. As you can see, she gets top commenter award. She has 76 comments, 52 likes from me personally, and it may be more because I actually screenshotted this a couple weeks ago and it just slipped my mind, but I wanted to present her. So here you go, boo. Thank you. I appreciate your support. You are so special to the Soul Tribe and to Miss Oshun, okay? And I love you. And with that being said, I also want to announce as a collective, starting tomorrow, January the 1st, I am doing a fast. We are doing a fast. January 1st, January 2nd, January the 3rd will be the last day. It will be a water fast, H2O or H2O3, H3O2, what the heck, fast. So that means just juicing. But personally, I want it to just be nothing but water, okay, for 3 days. No alcohol, no weed, no whatever you do, no food, just brain, breath, and water. Mind, breath, and water. Spirit, body, soul, okay? So if you're going to do it with me, put fast, collective in the comments, and let's get to it. Now, let's get to this video. This is the last video for 2024. We have big things coming in 2025, and I just appreciate the support. I'm staying in the present. Let's get to this video.
Have you ever had a premonition? If so, you know that they can be very scary, but sometimes they just might save your life. And tonight's spooky story covers just that. So our story follows two women, we'll call them Kelly and Elizabeth. Now, the two women are college-aged, they love going out, they love getting into things, and on this particular evening, they're at home getting ready to go out for the night with two guys that they're into. So Elizabeth is really excited about all of this, and Kelly is too. And while Elizabeth and Kelly are getting ready, they have this routine of playing some music, doing a little drinking, and turning on the television. So Kelly goes into the living room while Elizabeth is in the bedroom, and she cuts the TV on, but the channel it pops onto is the news. Now, the news is talking about how there was some train wreck, and Kelly turns it up, but decides it's too morbid, so she turns to a different channel and then goes back in the room to get ready. So while she's in the bedroom finishing getting ready, she hears the phone ring. So she goes out into the living room to answer it. It's the two guys calling to tell them that they're on their way and they'll be there in about 5-10 minutes. So Kelly's really excited. She shouts into the room to Elizabeth to tell her to hurry up because Elizabeth has a long way to go. And as she's standing there in the kitchen, she notices the TV again. So she was kind of confused when she saw it was back on the news channel. And like earlier, the news channel is talking about a train wreck. Now, Kelly is seeing this again, but she decides to watch it for a couple of minutes, and she sees that it was a black car, and instead of stopping at the train tracks like it should have, it decided to try to beat the train, and so this car was dragged amongst the tracks. It was a very violent accident. Now, again, this is really killing the vibe, so Kelly decides to turn the TV off, and she goes back into the bedroom to finish getting ready. Now, at this point, Kelly realizes she forgot something in the living room when she went to go answer the phone. And as she's walking back into the living room, she notices that the TV is on. But this time, instead of there being something playing on it, there's like a still picture as though the screen is frozen. So Kelly's looking at the TV, and the image that she sees on it is the same black car that was shown in the news clip earlier. It's just all over the tracks. It's wrecked. This car is obliterated. So Kelly is standing there staring at the screen. The image isn't moving, and she's getting this really uncomfortable feeling again. She just can't shake it. And she hasn't been able to shake it since they agreed to go out that evening with these guys. So Kelly, again, cuts the TV off, and she goes into the room to get ready with Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth by this point is done, and the guys are like 2 minutes away. So they're sitting in the living room again, and Kelly and Elizabeth are talking, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. It's the two guys, their date. So Elizabeth is really happy to see them. They look so good. The girls look good too. But as they're sitting there in the living room, again with the TV off, Kelly is staring into the screen. So there's something about Kelly's demeanor that's changed since they finished getting ready, and Elizabeth has taken full notice of it. Now Kelly is still sitting there staring into the TV, and Elizabeth gently prods her and asks her if she's ready to go. And Kelly is like, you guys have got to see this. Now, the two guys and Elizabeth are looking at Kelly, but there's nothing on the screen to look at. And so Elizabeth is asking Kelly, what is there to see? The TV's off, Kelly. And Kelly's like, I can't believe you guys aren't seeing this right now. Are you not seeing what I'm seeing? So Elizabeth is looking at the guys at this point, because the guys are looking at Kelly like she is absolutely crazy. So Elizabeth, trying to be a good friend to Kelly, decides to humor her. So Kelly says, we're going to die tonight if we go out. Now at this point, the guys are looking at both of them like they're crazy, and they're getting freaked out. But they're looking at her and they're like, well, if you guys aren't going to go, we're just going to head out because this is really creepy. Now, Elizabeth is trying to get Kelly to calm down because Kelly is frantic at this point. She's hyperventilating. And she's trying to stop the guys from leaving, and she's telling them, no, if we go out tonight, we are all going to die. We're going to die in a train wreck. Now, the guys are really scared at this point. Elizabeth's scared. And the guys are like, you know what, Elizabeth, if you want to come with us, you're more than welcome to, but you need to leave your friend at the house. Now, Kelly is trying to beg her friend to stay, but Elizabeth is pissed off. She spent hours getting ready. She bought an expensive dress. She knows she looks good, and she's been wanting to go out on a date with these guys for a very long time now. So Kelly's kind of getting in the way of that. But Kelly convinces her friend to stay with her. Now, the guys are looking at Elizabeth, and they're waiting for an answer. They tell her that if they don't leave in the next minute or so, they're going to miss their reservations. And if she doesn't want to go with them, that's fine. They're going to leave so they can go out and have a good time that night. So Elizabeth, thinking they're a little bit dickish for that, decides she'll stay with her friend. Now, her friend is still trying to beg these two guys not to go, but they've had enough. So once the guys leave, it's just Elizabeth and Kelly in the house, and Elizabeth is pissed. She can't even look at Kelly. And Kelly is trying to cop a plea. She's letting her know what she saw on the TV. Elizabeth is just not trying to hear it. So she walks into her room, and Kelly is left out in the living room. A couple of minutes later, Elizabeth decides to come out and get some food, and Kelly is still sitting in the living room. She hasn't moved from the spot that she had been in since the guys came over. But this time, the TV is actually on. So when Elizabeth comes out, she looks over at Kelly and then at the TV, and that's when she sees the breaking news story. There's been a train wreck, 2 casualties, and on the tracks there's a black car. It was the same car that the guys had pulled up in earlier that evening, the same car that was supposed to take the 4 of them out to dinner, the same car that would have been heading in the direction that led over the train tracks. And so as Elizabeth is standing there, she's glued to the screen just like Kelly is. And this is when she looks at Kelly, and Kelly looks at her, and Elizabeth breaks down because Kelly had just saved her life. So if you've ever had a premonition, go ahead and drop it in the comments. If you feel like sharing, you can tell me what it's about. But let me know what you guys are thinking. Do you think Kelly saw the imminent deaths of her and her friends that evening? Or do you think this was just some sheer coincidence? Anyways, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video.
She definitely saved her and her friend's life. I'm happy Elizabeth listened to her friend. Otherwise, it would have been 3 casualties. That was an amazing story, although it had nothing to do with New Year's Eve. But it's cool. I'm going to let you slide, shorty. What's your name? Clever Fox. That was clever because she got me. She probably just has New Year's Eve hashtagged or something. Whatever. It's cool. Next video.
Got followed by 3 men on New Year's Eve. I 22F was on vacation in San Antonio with a friend for New Year's. In retrospect, I would have picked anywhere else to celebrate, but I had never been to San Antonio before, so I thought it would be cool. When we pull up to the place, it's very obvious it's not in a great neighborhood, but it was extremely cheap and within walking distance to the river walk. I'm no stranger to questionable neighborhoods, so I wasn't too concerned about the area as it was very quiet. On the day of New Year's Eve, my friend got food poisoning and asked me to get them some stuff from the gas station down the road. I wasn't comfortable taking their truck, and since it was only an 8-minute walk, I started heading out. I got to the gas station no problem, but they didn't have Pedialyte, so I started walking to another gas station only 5 minutes away. This is where it gets sketchy. I'm halfway to the next gas station, and I notice there's 2 homeless guys walking around outside their tents next to the street I'm on. Originally, I was going to walk right past them and pay them no mind, but when I got closer, I could tell that they noticed me and were staring at me hard. I'm 5 feet 5 inches, not super athletic, pretty strong, but I'm not taking my chances. 2 grown men. Instead of going straight past them, I turned the corner. I assumed they would go about their business and leave me alone. I hear one of them say, "Hey Randy, come over here," and I glance behind me and see 3 men now following me. They're far enough away where I'm not worried, but extremely cautious. I glance behind me again after a few minutes. They're hunched over, huddled up like they're trying to sneak up on me, much closer this time. I make the smart decision to say fuck the Pedialyte and round the corner back towards our place. I'm maybe 1-2 blocks away when I check behind me again, and they have also rounded the corner and are walking quickly. I start booking it and I hear the men behind me yelling at me. I didn't look back this time, but I could hear shuffling feet breaking into a run. Thankfully, I made it inside before they could see where I went. I peeked out the peephole in the door and watched in horror as these 3 men came barreling around the corner and frantically looking around for me. They're arguing and pointing around, but eventually they fuck off. If I wasn't so alert, I shuddered to think what would have happened. And no, I did not get the Pedialyte. I had to get it delivered. Skull. TLDR, tried getting drank for sick friend, get followed by 3 men instead. Yes, I lived.
I said it once and I'll say it again. Ladies, keep your head on a swivel, okay? And keep some protection, even if you're on vacation. Something, okay?
On New Year's Eve, Mark found an ancient hourglass at a thrift store. It sang glimmering like stars. The shopkeeper warned that it could grant wishes, but at a steep cost. Intrigued, Mark bought it, eager to make a wish for wealth.
After returning from a night to celebrate the arrival of the new year, my husband and I returned to our apartment complex to turn in for the night. We both had a couple of drinks, but neither of us were intoxicated. As much as we enjoy partying with friends, when it comes down to it, we are really just homebodies. We lived in the corner penthouse suite of our complex. Although this was never confirmed, it was suspected the owners wanted to convert this apartment complex into condos. The rent certainly was not cheap, and access was limited to this floor. Upon entering the building, there is a walk-up, 2 secure doors, and every now and then, there would be a doorman to greet you as you entered or exited. There were also multiple security cameras placed throughout and around the building. It was an especially cold evening, and when we returned, there was no doorman present. It was late, at least 2 a.m. The foyer was empty, and one of the lights flickered softly. My husband and I entered the elevator and pressed the button to the top floor. The elevator ride was smooth, and as we ascended, I could feel myself becoming more relaxed, excited to finally be home and able to rest. My feet were killing me from wearing heels all night in the bitter cold. The bell chimed, signaling we had reached our floor. The door slid open, and we turned the corner to the left. Like I said, our suite was the corner suite at the end of the hall. However, something caught our eye. A woman, or what at least looked like a woman, was meandering through the hallway. Her hair was dark and scattered. It looked to be matted and covered her face. She wore a black lace dress that was torn and looked to be in bad shape. Thinking back, I don't even think she had any footwear on. We assumed she was intoxicated and was having difficulty finding her suite. Although on closer inspection, she didn't look familiar. We knew all of our neighbors, as like I said, access was limited on this floor. I looked at my husband, who stood still as well. I could see he was contemplating the same thoughts. I asked him, should we ask if she needs help? He looked at me and said, just wait, maybe she's just drunk and having a hard time finding her suite. The woman just continued to slowly slide herself along the walls of the hallway, stopping at each door and peering through the exterior peepholes. Admittedly, this was creepy, but it just added to the theory that she was a drunk woman looking for her friends. She was humming, or what I believe was humming. The sound was something between a growl and a hum. We stood there in utter disbelief and awe. However, there was a veil of tension and uneasiness that lingered. The strange woman stumbled through the hallway, hunched over until she pulled herself up to peer through the peephole. She eventually got to a suite of an elderly lady, whom I have a strong connection with. We'll just call her Tilly. Tilly was the sort of woman whose family had neglected her and rarely visited. She would bring my husband and I baked goods from time to time. I would bring her leftovers and assist her with groceries and medication frequently. Tilly's smoke alarm would constantly go off. I would have to rush over and pull out the smoldering toast from her toaster and fan her smoke alarm until it stopped beeping. At times a nuisance, but it would always turn into tea time. Nevertheless, I cared about Tilly, so when I saw this strange woman peer into her peephole, I reacted. I blurted out, "Excuse me, are you all right?" I could feel myself lose confidence as I asked. The strange woman seemed to shudder for a moment and hunched over to the floor. She looked like she was about to puke or was frightened by my voice. My husband and I stepped closer, but the woman then let out a series of soft and menacing laughs just barely audible. I have to admit, in this moment I was thoroughly creeped out and reached for my cell phone. It was uncomfortable because we couldn't get to our suite without having to walk right past this deranged woman. My husband said, "Hey, did you hear us? Do you need help?" Her laugh began to grow into what was a steady cackle. The strange woman then stood up. As she stood up, her cackle became a mixture between a cackle and a boisterous growl. She then stumbled forward and continued walking down the hall. There was a staircase just outside of our suite. I assumed she was making her way to the stairs, just too embarrassed to walk past us to the elevator. Maybe she was just a drunk woman and this was nothing more than an uncomfortable standoff with a sad and intoxicated woman. I mean, if she was really that drunk, the stairs probably weren't a good idea. We were on the 7th floor. Nevertheless, I just didn't feel like it was worth the risk to engage with this woman. I just wanted to enter my suite and dive into bed. It was late, and my feet still hurt. As we took a few steps forward, the woman stopped. Almost with laser precision, she stood up completely straight, looked right at our door, and then began to pound on our door screaming bloody murder. I could feel myself becoming swallowed with fear. I reached for my cell phone and began to dial 911. The woman kept pounding on our door and screaming. To be honest, I'm surprised none of our neighbors came out to see what was happening. Part of me thinks they were too afraid themselves and were probably peering out of their peepholes. Afraid of what our neighbors would think, my husband said, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop that." And just like that, the strange woman stopped, fell to the ground, and began crawling quickly towards us. She looked up for a brief second. All I could see were her dark eyes. Her mouth seemed to be stained black and she was growling again. But this time, it was as if there was something in her throat that she was choking on. Frozen with fear, my husband and I just watched until she flashed us a menacing hiss, the kind you would hear in a movie, but never imagine in real life. Terrified, I whipped off my shoes and my husband and I ran towards the staircase on the other side of the building. We didn't want to risk waiting for the elevator and have her catching up. We went down 2 flights of stairs and stopped to listen if she was making her way down the stairs. But it was almost impossible to hear as my heart was pounding so hard. I thought to myself, what the hell was going on? We waited there for 10 minutes or so, until eventually we had the courage to head up the stairs and back to our suite. The woman was gone, and so we entered our suite. I was just relieved to finally be safe in my home. My husband sent a text to our landlord, and he replied that we would hear from him in the morning. I was so unbelievably exhausted, but found it incredibly difficult to sleep. The sound of that woman's growling and cackling rang in my ears. I hardly slept. The next day, when my husband went to speak to the landlord, he asked him to check the security cameras, although nothing turned up. The landlord said the cameras glitched due to the frigid temperatures last night. To this day, I still don't know what to think. That woman most certainly had problems. The question is, was she dangerous? We moved about a year later, but every New Year's Eve, I still think about that night.
A New Year's nightmare. The case of the Wilson family. It was the last day of the year, December 31st, 1999. The world was abuzz with excitement over the turn of the millennium. People were partying, champagne glasses were clinking, and fireworks were waiting to light up the night sky. In the small town of Tehachapi, California, nestled in the Sierra Nevada foothills, the Wilson family prepared for a quiet New Year's Eve at home. John and Melissa Wilson, along with their teenage daughter Rachel, had opted out of the town's celebrations. Instead, they planned a cozy evening of board games and movies, a tradition they held dear. The Wilsons were well liked in their community. John was a schoolteacher, Melissa ran a bakery, and Rachel was an honor student with dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Their home, perched on the edge of a wooded area, was a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. As the clock ticked toward midnight, the family gathered in the living room. Melissa had just brought out a tray of cookies fresh from the oven when a sudden knock echoed through the house. John glanced at the clock. It was 11:45 p.m. Who would be visiting at this hour? He opened the door to find a man standing on the porch. The stranger was disheveled, his clothes torn and his face pale. "I'm sorry to bother you," he stammered. "My car broke down and my phone's dead. Can I use yours to call for help?" John hesitated. Something about the man seemed off, but it was New Year's Eve, and the season of goodwill prevailed. He stepped aside, allowing the man to enter. The man followed John to the kitchen, where the phone was mounted on the wall. Melissa and Rachel exchanged uneasy glances from the living room, their cheerful mood now tinged with apprehension. As the man picked up the receiver, he suddenly dropped it and lunged at John, pulling a knife from his jacket. Melissa screamed, and Rachel froze in horror as the scene unfolded. The man demanded money and car keys, his voice shaking but resolute. John, trying to stay calm, told him the wallet and keys were in the living room. The intruder forced the family into the room, where Melissa quickly handed over her purse. But instead of fleeing, the man seemed to grow more erratic, pacing and muttering under his breath. As the minutes crawled by, the family realized he wasn't just after money. He seemed unhinged, driven by something darker. Melissa managed to distract him by offering food from the kitchen, and in that fleeting moment, Rachel darted to the front door, slipping outside into the cold night. Barefoot and terrified, she ran to a neighbor's house, banging frantically until someone answered. The neighbor called the police, and within minutes, sirens pierced the quiet night air. Back at the Wilson house, the intruder heard the approaching sirens and panicked. He fled into the woods, leaving the family shaken but unharmed. Police apprehended him hours later, huddled under a tree, still clutching the knife. The man was identified as a drifter with a long history of mental illness and petty crimes. He had no clear motive for targeting the Wilsons, other than sheer desperation. That New Year's Eve, the Wilson family's quiet celebration turned into a nightmare they would never forget. But it also brought them closer, a stark reminder of how fragile life could be, and how quickly things could change. As the sun rose on the new millennium, they held each other tightly, grateful to have survived the night together. And while the scars of that evening remained, so did their resilience and their bond.
Mental health is real. Make sure you get help. Make sure you check on your loved ones. And don't be so quick to judge. Yeah, he did something bad. Yeah, he could have got shot at the wrong, But at the same time, mental health is real. And a lot of people need help mentally and can't get help or don't know how to get help or refuse to get help. But I can remember exactly what I was doing December 31st, 1999. I was 13 years old. I remember laying at the top of my steps, like half my body in my mom's room, half my body in the hallway, laying my head, like laying by the steps. And I'm on the phone with my very first boyfriend at the time. And I just have that memory. I don't know why. Probably because it was Y2K and everybody was talking about the world was going to end, which I didn't believe that it was going to end then anyway. I just was a very conspiracy theorist back then. So, yeah, just wanted to share that with y'all. Next video. But I'm happy the family's okay. The family that, they became closer from something horrible that happened, which usually happens a lot of times in situations. So it is what it is. My condolences.
Its mighty bell, a chilling herald of each passing hour, rang out into the frosty night, the sound reverberating through the desolate streets. But this was no ordinary tolling. Each chime seemed to resonate deeper, carrying with it whispers of forgotten tales and tragedies. The tower had seen countless New Year's Eves, each one etching a new layer of history into its stone skin. It bore silent witness to joyous celebrations, heart-wrenching farewells, and everything in between. But amid the echoes of laughter and tears, there were darker stories too, stories that sent shivers down the spine of even the bravest souls. As the bell tolled, it seemed to echo a warning, a harbinger of the horror that was yet to come. Delve into the town's history and you'll find a forgotten tale of terror. A tale that sends shivers down the spine of those who dare speak of it. You see, many years ago, on a chilling New Year's Eve, this quiet town was shaken to its core by a horrifying event. The clock tower, which we spoke of earlier, was not just a symbol of time, but a harbinger of an unspeakable disaster. As the town prepared to usher in a new year, filled with hopes and dreams, an eerie silence fell. The clock struck midnight, and then, nothing. The jubilant cheers and laughter that should have filled the air were replaced by a deafening silence. The townsfolk, who had been gathered around the tower, had vanished. No trace, no clue to where they had gone.
It was New Year's Eve of 2020, and all of us were ready for this horrible year to be over. My friend Logan was throwing a house party. I arrived early to help set things up. I secured a spot to sleep in his parents' room, meaning I could drive to the party and drink without having to worry about driving home. His parents obviously weren't home for the night. Most of our close friends in our friend group came, plus a bunch of Logan's friends who I didn't know. The party was fun. At midnight, everyone screamed Happy New Year and cheers their drinks. After that, people slowly started circulating out, and the party started to quiet down, as people went to either other parties, bars, or home. The later the night got, the more it became just the closer friends staying behind until it just turned into a chill drinking session in the living room. This went on late into the night. It was likely 3 a.m. when the last of everyone who wasn't sleeping at Logan's house was gone. As it quieted down, we started hearing this occasional sound. At first we didn't know what it was, but it soon started to sound like a creaking sound. It was dismissed as a sound from the fridge or something at first, which I know sounds stupid, but house appliances often make weird noises. It was just Logan, me, and Cody. Cody was falling asleep on the couch already. It was reaching that time where we were just going to go to sleep. However, eventually we got so bothered by the noise that we had to search. We went to the kitchen, and it wasn't coming from in there. We realized when we were close to the basement door that it was coming from downstairs. Logan opened the door, and we heard this creaking sound. "Go check what it is," I said. He kept saying, "No way." Then he called down into the basement, "Yo, who's down there?" The creaking stopped, and we never heard it again. After a solid minute of waiting at the top of the stairs, we agreed to go down together. We both grabbed knives, drunkenly thinking that was a good idea, when in reality we were so drunk we'd probably only hurt ourselves with them. We got to the bottom of the stairs and looked through the entire basement. It's not huge. It just has a couch, TV, a bar, a table in the corner, and various old pieces of junk. It was pretty messy at the time. The first thing we did was search any possible crevice for someone who could be hiding. Then we tried to figure out what could have been making that sound. I noticed a rocking chair, and so I went up to it, sat in it, and then started rocking in it. And it made the exact same creaking sound we had been hearing. Logan and I looked at each other. I stood up, and so did every hair on my body. I don't think we ever ran faster than we did when we ran up those stairs and slammed the door shut. We tried to come up with any logical explanation, but there was none. He kept the basement door locked for days until his parents came back. There was no living soul down there, but something was moving that rocking chair. That rocking chair used to belong to his grandma, who passed away forever ago, and it's just something his mom held onto for sentimental reasons. I can't say I've ever experienced anything resembling the paranormal before this, nor since then. It still sends chills down my spine.
The New Year's Eve that befell sorrow. At the top, Eli found the source of the light. The beacon shone with an otherworldly luminescence, its lens cracked but somehow intact. There, in the glow, stood the spectral figure of a man, his eyes hollow pools reflecting the stormy sea. He was an old lighthouse keeper, the one from the legends, trapped in an eternal vigil, cursed to relive the night he failed to warn a ship of the treacherous rocks. The ghostly keeper pointed out to sea, and Eli, drawn by an irresistible force, looked out to the raging waters. Within the fog, he saw the phantom outline of a ship, its masts broken, its sails torn, crashing against the cliffs with each wave. The screams of the doomed sailors filled the air, a chorus of agony and regret. Eli turned to the keeper, understanding dawning on him. This was his punishment, to witness the...
That story was okay, but and I love me a good piano tune, baby. But the background music was too loud, so turn it down a little bit. Other than that, good job.
Dog Bailey for the weekend while he was out of town for the new year. I'm 35, he's 27, so I don't have that same urge to go out and party for New Year's Eve like he does. So I was more okay with making some money and taking it easy for the night. New Year's Eve was on a Saturday. He left for the city early in the day when I got there. He'd be back Sunday night. He left me with very basic instructions, to just feed him and walk him twice a day and keep him off the furniture. Bailey is a very small husky mix. I'm not sure what else she is, but she's about a third the size of a regular husky, and she's very quiet and well behaved. Hence why Alex was okay with me watching her instead of a dog sitter. I brought a backpack which contained my laptop, charger, toiletries, and a change of clothes for Sunday. Alex and I don't go way back. We met through mutual friends and had started going out occasionally on the weekends ever since. I would be sleeping in the spare bedroom of his house on the futon. Throughout the day, I just did stuff on my laptop and played some of Alex's video games. Later in the night, I invited my girl over with Alex's permission. His response was, "You better not in my bed," a way of jokingly saying yes, she can come over. She said she'd be getting out of work after 12, but then she'd come straight over. Alex's house is about half an hour from us, so my girl Trisha wouldn't be getting there until late. I had to kill the time alone with Bailey watching movies until then. We were in the living room, and Bailey was by my feet. It was probably 9 p.m. when the doorbell rang. I went to answer the door, and it was a girl at the door. She looked about 30. She had a hoodie on and was holding a jacket. She introduced herself as Alex's girlfriend and said she left something here that she needed to grab. I offered to grab it if she wanted, and she said no, it's okay. She knew where it was in his room. I said okay, that's fine, and let her inside. She went straight upstairs to Alex's room and slightly closed the door behind her without latching it. I right away texted Alex, "I didn't know you had a girlfriend." She was in there for quite some time, until she came back out, still holding her jacket. She came back down the stairs and thanked me and was going straight for the door. I tried to stop her for a quick conversation, saying, "How long have you guys been dating?" And she said, "Too long," then laughed, as if making a joke. I laughed too, and then she said, "Have a good night." I was a bit surprised by the interaction, but what I gathered from it was they had probably just recently broken up. Now I started to worry that maybe I shouldn't have let her in. Since Alex hadn't answered my text yet, I called him a few times before he picked up. He was out with his friends in a loud setting, so he could hardly hear me until he went outside to talk. I told him his girlfriend just came by to grab something, and he was completely bewildered at what I was saying. "Who are you talking about?" he said. I responded, "She said she was your girlfriend. I didn't get a name." He said in a yell, "You know I don't have a girlfriend. What did she look like?" I started to feel really stupid just about now. I described the girl, and he said he had no idea who this could have been. I then proceeded to explain to him that she went upstairs to his room for a few minutes, then came back down. This was when he started freaking out. He told me to go up to his room now and check if she stole anything. Of course, I didn't know what was in his room beforehand, so he had me check for specific things, which all appeared to still be there. He tried hard to figure out who it could have been, and said he'd call me back after he made some calls and sent me some pictures of different girls. Understandably, this was putting a damper on his night. I could tell he'd already been drinking, so I felt awfully stupid for letting some random girl into the house. He started sending me screenshots of different girls' Instagram accounts, none of them resembling the girl who came in. When I said no to all of them, he went silent for an hour. Then he texted me randomly, "I think I know who it was. Make sure she doesn't come back." I didn't ask any further questions. I responded, "Okay, my bad," and left it at that. Clearly Alex was going through some serious girl drama, or so I thought. I watched the ball drop alone. Not that I really care about the new year or the ball drop at all. Later that night, Trisha finally made it over, and so we hung out in the living room together. I told her what happened, and she was shocked. But then a freakish coincidence happened. Bailey lifted her head and looked at the front door, and then there was a knocking at the door. Whoever it was didn't ring the bell. There was no shot I was opening it. I called Alex a bunch of times, but he didn't pick up. He was wasted and didn't even feel his phone vibrating. Trisha and I stayed quiet, and eventually whoever it was went away. I was honestly unnerved now. Surely it was in connection to whoever that girl was earlier. Maybe it was even her again. Either way, I didn't want to get involved any further in what was going on. After this, we decided to migrate to the spare bedroom where we'd stay for the night on the futon. We had a movie on as we laid down and I held her. We fell asleep in this position and woke up at some unknown hour in the night, which I later found out was less than an hour after we fell asleep. I woke to Bailey's howling. She was in the room with us. Trisha woke up after me. Bailey was at the bedroom door with her tail wagging, howling. I whispered, "Bailey, shush." She looked at me and then came over, but she stayed staring at the door, now growling, making unhappy whimpering sounds. Then there were footsteps outside on the wood floors. We heard what had to be at least 2 pairs of footsteps, tiptoeing to the door, and then the doorknob twisted. By force of habit, we had the door locked, thankfully, and a girl's voice said, "Alex?" I looked at Trisha and signaled for her to stay quiet. That girl was not alone. Another light tap at the door, and then the girl's voice said, "Who's in there? This is Alex's house." I made the decision to say in a loud voice, almost a yell, "The cops have been on their way for a few minutes now, just so you know." The girl said, "Who are you?" I didn't bite. I whispered to Trisha to actually call the police, and she did. The entire time she whispered into the phone. I said loud and clear, "I dare you to do something, because the time you do it, the cops will be running through the front door." I heard a whisper on the other side of the door. Then, multiple pairs of footsteps walking away from the door. We stayed in the room, waiting for the cops to get there. Since the front door was left wide open by those people, the cops came right in. The house was clear by this point. I gave my entire recount of the story, and then called Alex multiple times until he finally picked up, still sounding pretty drunk. One cop talked with him on the phone for a few minutes, while I sat with Trisha speaking with another cop. After all this was said and done, the accepted assumption was that there was a key in Alex's room taken by that girl from hours before. This was a pretty messy situation, since Alex couldn't just come all the way home this late. He practically begged me to stay the rest of the night. I had Trisha go home. I stayed because I felt responsible for letting that girl in the first place. I stayed locked in that room the rest of the night with Bailey. I literally wedged a chair against the front door, some half-assed attempt at keeping them out if they decided to return. By morning, though, it seemed that they didn't return. Alex came back earlier that day than originally planned. I'm not going to air out any more private information to the internet than I already have, just in case anyone who knows him can figure out this story is about him. But he did tell me who he thought the girl was, and the story behind it proves that men have to be careful too with the women they choose to interact with. That girl and whoever was with her's intention of breaking in wasn't to steal anything, evidently, which is the scariest part. He changed his locks ASAP. I can't even imagine staying in that house if I were him after this. However, it's been a year, and as far as I know, nothing has happened, unless he's keeping more to the story he told me a secret.
Once upon a time, in the most silent town nestled deep within the heart of a forgotten forest, the arrival of New Year's Eve brought with it an eerie sense of anticipation. The townsfolk, accustomed to the tranquility of their surroundings, were unaware of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. As the clock struck midnight, an otherworldly hush fell upon the town. The streets, usually bustling with life, became deserted, as if the very essence of the town had been swallowed by an unseen force. The moon, shrouded in an ominous mist, cast an eerie glow upon the empty houses and abandoned shops. Unbeknownst to the residents, a malevolent presence had awakened, drawn to the energy of the New Year's celebration. It whispered through the trees, its voice a chilling echo that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to listen. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unnaturally elongated and twisted. Shadows slithered along the walls, reaching out with ethereal tendrils, threatening to consume anyone who dared to venture too close. As the first rays of dawn broke through the darkness, the malevolent presence retreated, leaving the town in a state of disarray. The once silent town was forever changed, its tranquility shattered by the horrors of that fateful New Year's Eve. From that day forward, the townsfolk lived in constant fear, forever haunted by the memories of that night. The silence that once brought them solace now served as a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond their doorstep. And so, the legend of the silent town on New Year's Eve was born, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones, a reminder that even in the quietest of places, evil can find its way in.
My daughter went missing on New Year's Day 18 years ago. Today marks 18 years since my wife and I lost our daughter. She was born when we were both in our teens, so at times it really feels like a lifetime since we last saw her. Her name was Susan, and she was only 4 when we lost her. She was the absolute center of my wife's world. Understandably, the loss was unbearable for her. We've both dealt with lifetime friends passing before, but I had never seen her as devastated as she was after we lost Susan. The police searched for months, I suspect longer than they normally would have for a case like this, given the hell that my wife put them through when they had no new leads to report. Eventually, they stopped actively searching for Susan, and in one way or another told us that she could still be alive out there. But to start to cope with the fact that we'll probably be living our lives without her. After using up all of the time she was allotted away from work, Sarah, my wife, eventually lost her job. She spent her time holed up in the room we kept Susan's crib in, sometimes clutching some of her old toys. Her favorite had always been this little red fire truck that would flash when a button on the back was pressed. The batteries have since died, so I'm not sure if it works anymore. I always felt a little guilty for the sense of apathy that I felt towards it all. Maybe it's just the way that I cope, maybe just a personality trait, who knows? Every time the new year comes around, Sarah seems to fall into a minor bout of depression, considering the news she received on that day years ago. For most, the 1st of January is a reminder that the new year is something to look forward to, a time to learn from the mistakes of the previous year, and a time to start fresh where it's needed. For Sarah, the occasion of the holiday seems to just bring the terrible memory back all the more intensely. This year was a bit different, to say the least. My head is still spinning while I try and wrap my mind around everything. I really needed to tell someone what happened in order to work through it, and I couldn't share it with my wife, so here I am. The day started like any other January 1st. My wife sullenly stumbling into Susan's old room while I start preparing the best breakfast I know how to make to try and do anything to cheer her up. The first strange event of the day occurred when I went to check the mail and found a single envelope in our mailbox. "We don't get mail today, sweetie. Close the door. It's freezing," I heard coming from inside. "You know that I always forget that. That's what you get for marrying an idiot. Must have missed something from yesterday. Just leave it on the table or something. Only thing we get in the mail that I care about is bills, and I sure as hell don't feel like dealing with that today." I threw the envelope on our little round kitchen table, and my wife went upstairs to get a shower. I poured some coffee for myself and, after setting it down on the coffee table, slumped down into our couch and went about my morning tradition of finding a TV channel that wasn't playing something completely insipid. It took all of 5 minutes of scrolling through the seemingly endless directory of channels before I felt compelled to check the envelope. Although we're not scraping by any means, I've always been pretty paranoid about money, and if it was a bill, I needed to know how much money we'd be coughing up. I think the paranoia may come from the financial hell that followed my wife losing her job after we lost Susan. I grabbed the envelope and paused before instinctively ripping it open. Our address or a return address were nowhere to be found on the envelope. It was completely blank except for the words, "To you," written sloppily on the front in the center. I resumed opening the envelope, now more out of curiosity and less out of financial concern. I'm hoping my wife didn't hear the gasp I let out reading the contents of that letter. On notebook paper that looked decades old was written, "Happy Death Day to me. Happy Death Day to me. Happy Death Day, dear Sudson. Happy Death Day to me." After sitting stunned for several minutes and a bit weirded out that I had read the letter in my mind with the familiar tune that was supposed to evoke happiness, I quickly ripped the letter into several pieces and rushed it into our trash can outside by the curb. I heard Sarah turn off the shower, and there was no way in hell I was going to let her see it. I had trouble fathoming how cruel someone would have to be to play this kind of a joke on a family that lost their child. And who the hell would even be able to? Only very immediate family and a couple close friends know that we lost Susan. And how would they know that I used to call her Sudsan when I'd give her a bath because she loved playing with the soap bubbles? Only her and maybe Sarah knew about that dumb nickname. A few minutes later, Sarah descended the stairs and joined in my pursuit to find a TV channel worth watching. We always joked about how it was time to get rid of cable, but never seemed to find the initiative to follow through with our plan. We sat in silence once we landed on a channel playing some crime show. Sarah loves those. All that was swimming through my head was that letter and about a million other questions. As the day progressed, the letter worried me less and less. Sarah and I planned a wonderful dinner that we were going to prepare together. We picked out a movie to watch, and I had grabbed a gift for her at the local jewelry store to give to her after. I wanted to make the day special for her, and she really didn't seem as despondent as previous years. I think she was finally beginning to come to peace with what had happened. Better late than never, I guess. Midway through preparing our meal, the phone we keep on our kitchen counter began to ring. I asked Sarah to answer it while I continued working on breading the chicken that we were making. "Okay, but try not to ruin the meal." "Very funny." "Hello?" The phone was just loud enough for me to make out what my wife was hearing. The last song in the world I wanted to be reminded of. "Must be the wrong number. It's neither of our birthdays today. Unless you've been lying about yours this whole time," she said, hanging up the phone. I tried my best to force a laugh. The meal was a success, and Sarah loved her gift. Our movie ran pretty late, and we had finished the entire bottle of whatever wine Sarah had picked up on her way home from work yesterday. We decided to head to bed early because we both need to be up pretty early for work tomorrow. Sarah made her way up the stairs, and I worked my way around the house making sure that our doors were locked and any lights were turned off. As I went to turn off the light over our kitchen sink, I glanced through the window and something caught my eye in our backyard. We have giant shrubs near the back of our property. They had lost all of their leaves because of the season, and I saw through just enough to realize that there was something behind them. Being the paranoid guy that I am, I knew I had to investigate before my brain would let me go to sleep. I threw on the closest pair of shoes that I could find and grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight. As I got closer to the shrubs, a pang of nervousness shot through my body. I momentarily thought of turning back, but convinced myself otherwise. I forced one foot in front of the other until I reached the shrubs. Behind them I found a little red fire truck with a bundle of about 5 balloons floating above it, tied to the center of the toy. Plastered on one of the balloons was a note. I struggled to force myself to get any closer to the toy. When I bent down and grabbed the note, it read, "Did you get my letter? I've started to like it down here." It was written in that same familiar sloppy handwriting that I recognized from earlier. I was nearly knocked over with either guilt or terror or nervousness or all three. I was back inside before my brain caught up to what my legs were doing, and now here I am. I guess I can't find closure if I'm not honest. Where else to be honest but here? I had to do it. The constant crying and whining was too much. We were spending so much money on toys, clothes, pre-K schooling, and whatever the hell else. My wife spent all day obsessed with the thing. I couldn't take it. It was a strain on our relationship and a damn mistake. A mistake I tried to fix. Apparently, after what's happened today, one I failed to fix. But I had to try. Judge me in whatever way you wish. I'm my own harshest critic most of the time anyway. I had to do it. Hell, it's taking her a while to get over it, but I think even Sarah would eventually come to thank me if she knew.
What the fuck? What? What just happened? Did my brain not register that right? What the fuck just happened?
You getting lucky tonight for New Year's? My girlfriend and I were visiting with some friends out of town for New Year's. We were actually there for the week from after Christmas. When New Year's got closer, we were debating if we should go out to one of the many parties in the area or stay in and have something quieter. We ended up opting for the second option because we had our flight back home the next morning and didn't want to party all night. So we had a really nice evening, my girlfriend and I, our hosts. Let's call them Jack and Jill, and their neighbors. It was a pleasant evening with wine, snacks, and pleasant conversation. There was some flirting on Jack and Jill's part, but we've gotten pretty comfortable around each other over the week. Finally, the countdown arrived. We rung in the new year, all the couples did their thing and gave pecks, and it was time to wrap up. The neighbors left for their home, and we were cleaning up in the kitchen. When we finished cleaning and we were saying our goodnights, Jack said, "Wait, I don't get a New Year's love." I knew he was joking, but the wine and the flirting put me in a fun mood, so I grabbed him and gave him a peck. Not to be outdone, Jill grabbed my girlfriend, and they did the same thing. After a minute, Jill pushed Jack and said, "My turn," and started making out with me while Jack and my girlfriend made out for a bit. We then said our goodnights for real and started heading for our room. We reached the middle of the hallway where the guest room was. My girlfriend and I headed in. As we turned around for our last good night, Jack said, "Good night, you two. Happy New Year." Jill giggled and said, "Play your cards right next time and you might get more than a peck." And she winked, and they turned towards their bedroom. That last comment left me and my girlfriend standing there with our mouths gaping wide. But only for a half a minute before my girlfriend pushed me onto the bed and said, "I know someone who's getting more tonight."
He could cook though, and that food look good. Besides the chicken, I would do tofu, but honey, all of that looks delicious. I'm hungry now.
This is a horrifying New Year's story. A man by the name of Tom and his wife were hosting a New Year's party and were planning on inviting anywhere from 20 to 30 of their friends to their condo. But before anyone arrived, Tom made sure to set up surveillance cameras in case anything were to happen. And at around 9 p.m., most of Tom's friends had arrived at his condo ready for New Year's. Tom didn't recognize some faces, but he also remembered that some of his friends brought over friends as well. Fast forward to when it was about 1:30 in the morning, everyone had left the party and Tom and his wife were getting really tired and wanted to go to bed. But this is when Tom noticed something really strange. Most of his valuable stuff that he left in his room were now missing. But Tom instantly thought back to the surveillance cameras he had set up. So he quickly downloaded the footage from the surveillance cameras and reviewed it. Tom ended up finding a guy he didn't recognize searching through his room. But the guy never ended up leaving Tom's room. Instead, he just hid under Tom's bed. Tom instantly looked at his wife in fear.
You should have a pistol right there by your bed, though. So, grab it from the side and just point it up under there and shoot. Baby, that's what I would do. What? He didn't even leave? So he took everything and stayed, which means he has more motive, which is he wants blood. So take his. That simple. What? But you reached the end of another video. Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, baby. Happy New Year. It's the end of 2024. And I hope this year, it was very heavy for a lot of folk. And I mean, the past is the past. All you can do is look towards the future, but live in the present. Like I always say, be kind to people, and the kindness will somehow bring you happiness. Trust me. I know it's hard, but at least you can do your part to try to make the world a better place. And that's just by being kind. It's free. Okay. We're going into 2025. Let's do this fast. January 1st, tomorrow. January 2nd, and then January 3rd will be the last day. I want to do it as a collective energy because the more energy involved, the better it'll be the outcome for those involved. I would love to do it monthly or every other month. But yeah, I love y'all. Y'all are my soul tribe. Tribe is with a Y. Y is for you because I love you. Stay strong, be grateful, be kind, love, 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 love yourself before you can love anyone else. But make sure you admit love, period. Okay? I'm out here. See y'all next year. Ashe.